Good evening, everyone. I'm excited to be with you for the second installment of spiritual preparation for the High Holy Days. Tonight, I want to talk about Teshuva, which is one of the key themes, key messages of the High Holy Days, but I want to talk about it maybe in a slightly different way than we often do. And I want tonight to be a conversation, definitely not a lecture. We are preparing our hearts for this season together. And this whole month of Elul is a chance to prepare our hearts every morning during Shacharit, during morning services during this month. We traditionally blow the shofar as a way of piercing through with that piercing sound, that piercing call of the shofar, piercing through our complacency, piercing through the normal path that we get accustomed to treading, to walking every day, whether it's literal or metaphorical. So often we get, whether we're stuck in a rut or just comfortable on the path that we're on, the high holidays remind us every year to re-examine, are we really truly the people that we want to be? How can we become better people in the year ahead? And what can we do to bridge that gap? So today I'd like to talk about one notion of Teshuva, how do we normally translate Teshuva?
Repentance.
Repentance, exactly, Thank you. And repentance or atonement is the literal translation of Yom Kippur. Lechaper or Kippur in Hebrew is the root for atonement. But Teshuva actually means something different. It actually means the literal root. Does anybody know what the literal root of Teshuva means?
Return.
Thank you, Russell. Exactly. Russell is our most advanced student in our adult Ulpan, which is getting kicked off this Sunday. So if any of you are not signed up and would like to learn Hebrew, we have a few spots left. So just shoot me an email if you're interested, rabbi.jeff@timememphis.org, and we can get you right in. But exactly, Russell, it means to turn or to return. So I want to talk about a potential path to return, to turning from the path that we're on and returning to maybe the path that we are meant to be on. So I'd like to share this first reading. This comes from our Yom Kippur Machzor from Mishkan HaNefesh. And it just seems logical to me that if we are going to turn, what is, is it Judy Dench that said, what's the best place to start? At the very beginning. That was a little before my time, but I think that was Dame Judy Dench. Okay, so could somebody please read the first, starting in the italics, and then I can read the Hebrew.
Can it be made any bigger?
Is it small?
Well, for my eyes that need that eye surgery.
Let me see what I can do.
I'm going to get cataract surgery, so right now it's small.
Let me stop the share and then I'll zoom in here. Let's see.
Let's see.
That's obviously very, very small, right?
Very small. Oh, now you're talking.
So let's see what we can do.
Yeah, you're doing it, Rabbi. You're doing it. All right, let's see.
1 second.
You're getting there.
We're working on it. Okie dokie. Is that big enough for you, Wendy?
Yes, except I'm just trying to get the whole thing in, right? Okay, perfect.
Okay.
You are wonderful. Now, where do you want me to start?
We marvel, please.
Okay, we marvel at the abiding miracle of our existence, the primordial explosion of being and light, our origins in oneness. Through contemplating the mystery of creation, may we ascend toward the holy.
Thank you. So there's a couple things in this one introduction that we're going to come back to. a few times tonight. But I'd like to, before I get your thoughts on that, read from the very beginning according to our tradition from the Torah. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, normally translated as in the beginning, but if you really look at the Hebrew grammar, it is more as God began to create the shamayim, the heavens and the earth, although the punctuation doesn't match that. Ve'haaretz hayta tohu vavohu, and the earth was unformed and void, which is a spiritual state that I think we can aspire to return to during this month of Elul, a month in which we try to step away from the concrete, the fixed patterns that we have gotten ourselves into, and try to become a little bit in our soul, tohu vavohu, shapeable, unformed and void. So in addition to the whole world or the whole universe being unformed and void, also the choshech al panei hatahom, that there was darkness upon the face of the deep. This is one of my favorite lines. If you've ever come to my Jewish meditation classes, I come back to this often. We probably won't focus on it today, but Veruach Elohim merachefet al panei hamayim, and the breath or the spirit or the wind of God, Ruach has all those meanings, was merachefet al panei hamayim, was something on the face, above the face of the water. This word merachefet is actually only used twice in the entire Tanakh, in the entire Hebrew Bible. And so we don't know exactly what it means. But in, the other book is escaping me. But I think Jeremiah, but I could be wrong. I think it starts with the J. I'll get back to you on that. But merachefet is used, and in modern Hebrew means like the wings of an eagle, or an eagle merachefs over the water. So either flapping or hovering. You can imagine, if you've ever seen a big bird. We were just walking at Shelby Farms before we got before this class, and there's blue herons, which is one of the best parts of Shelby Farms. And if you see a big majestic bird like that just hovering over the water, I think that's what this verb connotes, that God was hovering, or the Ruach of God, the Spirit of God, was hovering over the face of the water. Vayomer Elohim Yehi Or, Vayehi Or. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. So in the very first day of creation, we go from complete darkness, from complete chaos, tohu vavohu, from complete unformed and void, to light. So before we move on, I'd like to just get your thoughts quickly about why are we reading Bereshit? Why are we reading this section of Bereshit on a class about the High Holy Days?
Traditionally, wasn't the world supposed to have been created on Rosh Hashanah?
Beautiful, beautiful. There's a song that we sing on Rosh Hashanah, Hayom Harat Olam, that today the world was conceived, or literally maybe means today God is pregnant with the world, but something like that. And yes, there's some idea that Rosh Hashanah was literally the first day of creation, or the first day of creation we observe as Rosh Hashanah every year. Very nice, Russell. Linda.
We have an opportunity to create ourselves each year also, just like God created us originally.
Very nice, very nice. There's a line in our morning prayers. That is B'chol Yom Tamid. Oh gosh, it's
Ma'aseka
say that again, Mary.
Adonai.
Exactly. It's from that same prayer. It's I'm blanking on the exact line, but it's something like that in God's graciousness, God recreates mechadesh, the works of creation, Maaseh Bereshit, every day. B'chol Yom Tamid, every day, that God is always recreating. That creation wasn't this thing in the beginning, and maybe this is a theological reason why we don't translate this as in the beginning God created, because God is constantly, according to Judaism, creating and recreating the world. There's Kabbalistic notions that God is actually creating every moment that's happening. God is actively creating the world in that moment and keeping the world going. And but we as God's
Rabbi?
partners also have the opportunity to recreate ourselves, and especially on Rosh Hashanah. Very nice.
Rabbi, that
Yes.
idea also makes me think about Tikkun Olam, that if God is constantly creating, that we're helping him in that, in doing that through Tikkun Olam.
Beautiful, beautiful. So that when God creates the world, not only us, but all other things, that we can be God's partner in repairing the brokenness in the world that we're all a part of. So that's a really nice segue, Wendy, to where I would like to go next. So let's see, just in this one page of the Motzort, there's so much. Yes, Tom.
Yeah, I'd like to point out that some cosmologists, some astrophysicists think that matter is constantly being created now, that the cosmos is continuing to expand, and that matter is being created out of nothingness, even as we speak.
So, Tom, that is well beyond my high school physics class, which I did okay in, but that was the last physics class I took. So I'll have to take your word for it. But I promise, actually, we're on the very next slide, we're going to get very close to that idea. So very nice. But so could somebody please read this next text, oneness? And this, by the way, is the whole rest of this page is from Daniel Matt, who is definitely the preeminent scholar of the Zohar alive today, the key Kabbalistic text. And for Kabbalah, for those of you who don't know, is the foundation of Jewish mysticism. And he just in the last couple of years completed a complete translation of the Zohar into English, the first scholarly translation into English, and it is by all accounts excellent. I can't claim to know enough to be proficient enough in Aramaic to say whether or not I think it's a good translation, but from all accounts, it is a real gift to Judaism. So does somebody want to read here oneness?
Oneness is grounded in scientific reality. We are made of the same stuff as all of creation. Everything that is, was, or will be started off together as one infinitesimal point, the cosmic seed. Life has since branched out, but this should not blind us to its underlying unity.
Thank you, Russell. Very nice. So what is this saying here? What is Danny Matt saying? Tom, you said a moment ago that energy, that matter might potentially be, whether it's in a stage of creation out of nothing, or whether the universe is in a state of constant expansion. We know that the universe is constantly expanding because of, I'm trying to remember, it's like the Doppler effect. with
The
red and blue
blue shift,
radiation.
Yeah. Light is blue shifted. The further away you go, the further the frequency of the light gets shifted.
Exactly.
The Doppler effect. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you. And so we do know that the universe is constantly expanding, and yet we are all, according to Judaism and also according to physics, made of the same stuff, the same energy, which is vibrating as matter, and we are all connected in the same stuff. But I love this last line, and we'll touch more on this, of course. But I love this last line. We have branched out. Life has since branched out from this one infinitesimal point, but this should not blind us to its underlying unity. So to actually get into this idea of unity more, I want to bring you a text from none other than the probably the most famous Jewish physicist of all time. Can you see that?
Yes.
Einstein and the Rabbi. Has anybody read this book by Rabbi Naomi Levy? So this is a really wonderful book that I highly recommend. All about the interconnection of us with the world around us. And it was inspired by a reading that Rabbi Levy found. She's a rabbi in California, I believe conservative or reconstructionist. And it's based on a text, that a letter that Einstein sent a rabbi. I'm not going to tell you the whole context right now, but this book was based on this letter, which I want to read you a section of here. Is that too small to read?
No.
A human.
It's good.
Sure. Go ahead, Bess. Is that too small?
No, no, it's
Okay.
perfect. A human being is a part of the whole, called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion, to embrace all living creatures and the whole nature in its beauty. Nobody is able to achieve this completely, but the striving for such achievement is in itself a part of the liberation and foundation for inner security.
Thank you,
That
Bess.
is amazing, Rabbi. Thank you for sharing. I'm like, oh my God, this Einstein, he's just amazing.
Isn't he? This text for me was really transformational. This, as the person who had probably more insight into the inner workings and underpinnings of the universe than any other human being to ever live. And what he's saying is almost word for word echoing what we had in the prior slide up here in Kabbalah, right? That we are all, can you guys hear my dog scratching at the door? I think she wants to learn some Torah too. We can't blame her for that. But he is echoing this notion that we are all interconnected. But I love the way he identifies. He says right here, we experience the world, we experience life as being separate from other beings, right? When I look at you, or you look at me, we're obviously now looking at a screen, but I look at myself as being something separate from this screen, or separate from each of you, or separate from the trees and the mountains. But what he says, what Einstein of all people says, is this is a kind of, what does he say, an optical delusion of our consciousness. That in fact, even though we appear to be separate from other things, in fact, we're all one, we're all interconnected.
Rabbi, I just want to say that this is something that I've been into for a long time. And You know, when I talk to people about this, sometimes I say, you know, every single thing there is, whether living or dead, is made of protons, neutrons, and electrons, can be broken down to protons, neutrons, and electrons. We are all this table and me, we're made of the same thing. So can you only imagine how interconnected our emotions really are?
Beautiful. And how does this impact that notion you brought up a minute ago, Wendy, of tikkun olam? Carolyn, please.
Well, if we're fixing the world, we're really fixing ourselves because it's all the same.
Very nice. If we're fixing the world, we're fixing ourselves. And in this month of exploration, spiritual exploration, in these 10 days of awe, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and the 10 days in between, in which we look inwards and do our best to figure out how we can become better as people. We're not only fixing ourselves according to this, but we're fixing the entire world. Fixing ourselves is a way of fixing the entire world or affecting the entire world because we're all interconnected, but also perhaps a way of influencing positively, affecting, repairing God. If God is what interconnects and interweaves and unites each one of us, then we actually have the power this time of year, not only to repair ourselves, litaken et atzmo, or litaken et ha'olam, to repair the world, but also to help repair the brokenness, the sadness, the lack of wholeness of God. So I want to share a few ways that we might undertake that tikkun, undertake that reparation, and I'm happy to share this text with you. Just shoot me an email, happy to share with you. But this actually comes from an article in the New York Times that published the entire letter that he wrote to the rabbi, that Einstein wrote to the rabbi. In the book by Rabbi Naomi Levy, she doesn't have the whole letter, but I can't recommend the book enough. So we're going to read a few readings from Rabbi Levy, Naomi Levy, in the book. So what does she say on this topic? Somebody, I'll scroll down because I don't think we can fit it all. Let's try. The text is a little bigger. I'm going to try to start this slideshow. Can you still see that, or did it get small?
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Oh,
I'll read it.
okay, thank you, Elaine.
Einstein and the Rabbi. Invisible threads of connection run through us and through the entire universe. The soul's consciousness links us to the blade of grass beneath our feet and to the majesty of the high peaks and to the souls of the living and the dead. The collective soul of generations long gone echoes through us and reverberates in the rhythms of our daily lives. The soul perceives that those we have loved and lost are never far from us. Life may end, but the light of their presence continues to shine on us from the place of eternity.
Thank you. So what is Rabbi Levy saying here?
It's very similar to what Wendy was saying earlier about everything being connected, and she wasn't that different from the chair. I think that kind of echoes the same idea.
Totally. So she's saying, she's building on what Einstein said, which is hard to believe that anybody can build on what Einstein said, but she's building on what Einstein said, that we're all interconnected. The invisible threads of connection run through us and through the entire universe. But she adds another element, to me, a very Jewish element to this notion of interconnection. What is that?
Well,
The soul.
it's the soul, the eternity of the soul.
That's right.
The eternity of the
Living
soul.
in the dead.
Yes.
You know, this is a really wonderful discussion. but I'm just gonna pause for 1 sec as I let my dog in because she's just, I can't concentrate with all the scratching. So I'll be right back.
She can join the rest of us.
I think Zooms are much more fun when people's pets are in the frame anyway.
Mhm.
She's a
Oh,
cutie.
there's somebody's
Listen.
puppy there. Terry has her puppy. Oh,
Yeah,
Terry.
Terry
This
is such a
this
cute
is an-
little baby.
interspecial Zoom meeting.
Chihuahua, right?
Interspecies, species. There we go. Interspecies
Aw.
Zoom meeting. See?
So no wonder they were scratching so much. This is actually not my dog, my parents' dog, Teddy. My parents are out of town. And so we're watching Teddy, and he is very eager to learn a little Torah.
Yes.
Oh, put him on the camera. There he
Oh,
is.
there he is.
Yep.
Yeah.
There he is.
Yossi, you see Teddy?
Uh,
Oh, don't. Yeah.
Oh, Terry, your dog is happy to learn Torah too.
Yes.
So, but I mean, if we take Einstein seriously or the Kabbalah seriously, we are all interconnected. We are
That's
all
right.
part of the same spirit of the universe.
Yossi
So-
agrees. He's going to go nap again now. Okay.
Yeah, same for you, Teddy. So, in addition to this eternal soul, which Rabbi Levi brings in, that links each one of us to the grass beneath our feet. What I'm really struck by is her notion of the soul being connected to both everyone that's living and also those who've come before. To me, the high holidays are one of the times in the year that I feel most connected to the people who came before, to my ancestors, to people in my life who've passed away. In many ways. And I'd like to ask you, in what ways are you reminded or feel connected to the people whose shoulders we stand upon when we gather together for the high holidays?
Well, there's always Yisker. I mean, we always, those of us who have people that we've lost in our immediate family, we always have Yisker. And it's a very, well, it's cathartic. It's kind of a difficult hour, but it's cathartic.
Thank you, Wendy. Would anyone else like to share?
I don't know if I'm putting this well or not, but when you sit down in the synagogue, when you're my age, which is not a very young one, and you sit there and you sit down in the synagogue, you're sitting down each time with a lot of people that are no longer there to sit with, but yet they are there. They're always there with you.
Very nice. I think you're reminding me of a synagogue I went to when I was in Lithuania, about in a small shtetl, about an hour outside of Vilnius today. And it was a community in which about 2/3 of the residents before the Holocaust were Jews. All but 3, I think, were murdered in the war. And you walk into this synagogue, which has a caretaker who is not Jewish. His closest friends were Jews who were killed in the Holocaust. And he, to this day, takes care of the synagogue and keeps the key and whatnot. And I went into synagogue with some of my rabbinic classmates, and sitting in this place where for generation after generation, Jews came together and prayed, always facing east towards Jerusalem. And now today, what a miracle that for 2,000 years they prayed every day to get back. And now we can go there whenever we want. When I lived there, I lived a 20-minute walk from the Western Wall. But I got this very deep sense of connection to the generations who came before. And the fact that even though they died, even though their life was cut short, Am Yisrael Chai, that the Jewish people live. And every year when we come together on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we follow in the footsteps of the people who have been doing this, our literal ancestors or our spiritual ancestors who've been doing this same ritual, coming together, looking inside themselves the same way that we are doing today. And in this holiday, Yizkor, as you said, Wendy, but more than any other, as the most observed Jewish holiday over the course of time, today actually in America, Passover Seder is the most observed Jewish holiday. But it to me, and sitting in Temple, where so many of us in this city have roots going back many generations, it is a very special place to come together and pray. Linda, I see that you are raising your hand.
Without it even being something formal like a ritual, I think many of us always stay connected because we stop and think, now what would Daddy think about that? How did Mama handle that particular situation? I want to do the way I was raised. And I think we just do. It's not a formalized thing, but we're still connecting with those that have had an influence on us throughout our lives. And that becomes, an integral part of most everything we do, actually.
That's a really beautiful idea, Linda, and especially when we tie it to Teshuva. When we think about the person that we want to be or want to become or want to return to, this notion of returning to the person maybe we once were, the person that our parents tried to shape us into. When we think about the person we want to be, like you said, Linda, a lot of who we might want to be, or who we might, in some cases, unfortunately, who we might not want to be, who we might not want to be like. So much of that is guided by our parents. I want to pick up on one line from Rabbi Levy, where she says, the collective soul of generations long gone echoes through us and reverberates in the rhythms of our daily lives. So I'd like to think what she's saying is, even though people have passed away, their soul, part of our collective soul, but also their particular souls, live on through the way that we act and interact in the world. So as we think about the people that we want to become, we are actually also bringing their souls into the world and manifesting their continuity through our intention, through our kavanah, but also through our action. So connecting to the past and thinking about how the past might influence who we want to be is one aspect of Teshuva, one aspect of how we recreate ourselves. I'd like to share another aspect, another notion of how we might do that. So let's read this. Go for it, Russell.
And I just want to say this, because mention was made of the fact that our parents always remain with us. And I have to pass along to you what I thought was the most wonderful compliment that I ever received from anyone. There was a member of the congregation for years. Some of you may remember him by the name of Joe Ashendoff. Joe was a friend of my father's who was also named Joe. And he happened not too many years ago, just a year or two before he passed away, to attend a service when I happened to be the Torah chanter for the day. And when I got through, he walked up to me and he said, Joe would be proud of you. And that was the statement he made. And I thought that was the most wonderful compliment that I ever had, someone telling me my father would be proud of me.
Very nice, Russell. Very nice. And I think who said this a moment ago, Linda, that so much of our lives, and I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm sure we have one or some kind of psychological person on this call, psychologist, psychiatrist, therapist, but that we do spend so much of our lives trying to live up to the expectations of our parents. We do things that we want them to be proud of, seeking their affection or their approval, even long after they're gone.
All the way to the point of becoming a rabbi, right? I mean,
Yeah.
That's true. I can't say I have any rabbis in my family, at least for a few generations, although a relative of mine did some genealogy, which determined that I'm actually a descendant of Rashi, which is amazing. Rashi, the preeminent Jewish scholar in 12th or 13th century France, except for the fact that pretty much all French Jews, a very large percentage of French Jews, are also descendants of Rashi in some form or another, but I'll take it. So let's go to another way of helping us along this road of turning, and Teshuva. Who can read this one for us? I can read this one, and then the next one is longer. So the truth is, the soul doesn't deal in satisfaction or bliss. It deals in open eyes and discomfort. The soul wants you to be uncomfortable enough to strive for more, to grow and to learn and to see what needs fixing in this beautiful and broken world. What's Jewish about this? Yeah, Carolyn.
Deed and not creed.
So say more about that.
Just, it's very Jewish that you must do something. You can't just believe and be happy. You're expected to do something, if nothing else, but to grow and learn and help, but not to just sit back and believe.
Very nice. Very nice. We have to strive for more, to grow, to learn, and to see what's fixing in this beautiful and broken world. Yeah.
and there's your tikkun olam right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Terry, go ahead.
I have found, since I don't have parents that would have given me the traditions, and but I have found Judaism to be very clear-eyed about the conditions of our lives, and when things are not pretty, it doesn't try to gloss over anything. It actually looks at things that are uncomfortable, for instance, death and mourning, and actually deals with it head on. And I think that's a very Jewish thing. And that's what I see in here, is that the soul wants you to be uncomfortable to strive for more. And Judaism does not try to pretty up anything except in trying to help you fix the problem.
Very nice. Miriam Alana, I see you.
Yes. What I hear from this, what I see from this is it's the journey. It's not a destination. You never get to the finish line. So that's my whole thing about this is you're always striving for more and more.
So if we get satisfied, if we stop with the satisfaction for who we are, for the person that we've become, for the things that we've achieved, well, you put it really nicely, Miriam Milano. What'd you say?
That we're always moving forward. It's not a destination, it's the journey.
Right. Not the destination, it's the journey. And that there's always, no matter if you are the holiest most pious, most kind person, there's always more that you can do to achieve a higher level of goodness, of kindness, of spiritual connection as well. This text reminded me, there's a reading, let's see if I can find it quickly, in the Shabbat evening Amidah that we read sometimes. If you have your Siddur next to you, it is on the bottom of page 55. And it is by, never remember who wrote it. You know, all of the wonderful readings in our Siddur, you can find who wrote it on like the back few pages. There's a listing of who wrote it. This one is Rabbi, Mitchell Salem Fisher, who has an interesting bio, but we're not going to get into it tonight. But here's what he writes. He writes, "Disturb us, Adonai, ruffle us from our complacency, make us dissatisfied with the peace of ignorance, the quietude which arises from a shunning of the horror, the defeat, the bitterness, and the poverty, physical and spiritual, of humans. Shock us, Adonai, deny to us the false Shabbat which gives us the delusions of satisfaction amid a world of war and hatred." He goes on, "Make us know that the border of the sanctuary is not the border of living, and the walls of your temples are not shelters from the winds of truth, justice, and reality." It continues a little bit, and you might remember it because I like to read it a lot when I'm leading services. But to me, it's so much the design of our sanctuary that it's just half the circle. And we have to go out into the world and complete the circle. And if we get complacent that all God wants us to do is sit in our beautiful sanctuary and listen to Happy or Emily or any of our amazing musicians sing, if we get complacent and think that's all that God wants us to do, we're totally missing the point. There's so much more to do than just being comfortable with who we are and what we have in the world. And I think that's also one of the messages of these high holidays, that no matter who we are and how proud we are of ourselves or comfortable we've gotten in our lives, materially, emotionally, that there's always more that we can do to strive for. So I think we have time for one or maybe two more ideas. Let's skip this one and maybe we'll come back to it. So this one is linked to the Kol Nidre, which, who knows what the Kol Nidre, before we read it, what Kol Nidre, which is the most iconic prayer of the high holidays, probably. Unatana Tokef maybe being a close second, or maybe the first. Unatana Tokef is the one, who by fire, who by water, and who, of course, Leonard Cohen probably made more famous than the Machzor, but both of these very, very important texts for this holiday. What's Kol Nidre about? Len, are you saying something? If you were, you're on mute.
It's about not living up to expectations.
Very nice. Very nice. I want to touch on that, but does anybody want to add anything else? Russell, sure, go ahead.
Wasn't it to protect us from being foolish? Because it was a protection against foolish vows.
Exactly. So neder is a vow. Nidre or nedarim are vows, plural. And Lynn, can you repeat what you said? I loved how you put it.
About not living up to expectations. We make these vows, we make these promises, Some we fulfill, others we fail miserably. And in the misery, there is Teshuva.
Very nice. Very nice. So we make vows throughout the year, and to early Jews and to the early rabbis, a vow was more important, was more binding than signing a contract. In the ancient world, your word, your oral word, was your bond, and a vow was an oath that you took not only to another human being but also to God, to extra cement the commitment that you're making. And sometimes, as both you, Lynn, and Russell said, we might think in one situation we are gonna live up to our vows. The story of Yiftach or Jephthah's daughter in the Tanakh, in the Hebrew Bible, I think it's in the book of Judges, is a Terry, did you say something?
Oh, no, I was just saying, oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
The story, yes.
Yes, it's quite a terrible story. He, correct me if I'm misremembering, Terry, but he's coming back. He's in battle, and he says, well, Terry, you can probably tell it better than I can. Can anybody tell it better than I can?
Oh, he says he makes a vow to God that he will sacrifice the first thing he sees if he can win this battle. And as he's coming home, the first thing he sees, his daughter runs out to greet him. And the rabbis say that he didn't fulfill the vow. But the Torah, the book of Judges says differently.
Yeah, exactly. And so some rabbinic commentators say this actually, even in the Tanakh, even in the Bible, shows that there are limits to what we should ascribe to our vows. That even if we make a vow, there's some reasons, some vows are so unattainable that we shouldn't feel forced to keep them. Essentially saying Jephthah, Yiftach was wrong. And of course, vowing to sacrifice your daughter to God is about as antithetical in Judaism as we can think of. But to bring it to less gruesome and grotesque, every year on when we sing Kol Nidre, we are essentially asking God to annul all of the vows that we made to God throughout the year. Like if we said, God, if the Tigers beat Ole Miss, then I promise I'll go to temple every Shabbat for the rest of the year. And then sometimes you fell short. That would be a vow we would ask God to annul in Kol Nidre. And it is maybe not because of the meaning of Kol Nidre that it is such a emotional tie for each of us, but for the music, the message of Kol Nidre is important, that we make mistakes, that we screw up, and that we should get a second chance. But also, of course, the haunting tune of Kol Nidre that we all now know and are either love or makes us feel connected to our childhood or to our parents or whatever it does for you. I think that is as much as the message of Kol Nidre is the haunting tune that makes us feel so connected to it. But getting back to the message for a moment. Sorry, here I am rambling on about it, but getting back to Rabbi Levy, what does she say about our path in life and how it relates to Kol Nidre? Lynn, would you mind reading?
We all start life off with an open, curious, loving heart, and then inevitably we get hurt. Life can be cruel. Someone lets you down, someone shames you, betrays you, someone breaks your heart. So we start making vows. I'll never get fooled like that again. I'll never talk to him again. I'll never forgive her for what she did to me. These vows we make, we take them to heart, But the heart of stone isn't just armor that protects us from incoming attacks. It also makes us less receptive to incoming love and surprise and blessings. And that's why I believe Jews recite the Kol Nidre prayer each year. They come together to annul those vows we made that have caused our hearts to constrict.
Thank you very much, Lynn. So she takes this in a slightly different direction. She's not talking about vows that we make to God to be better people. What's the kind of vow that she's saying that we too often make in our lives? Maybe, and probably most often, subconsciously.
Making some kind of a deal, I think, is what, I'll do this if you'll do that for me.
Like a tit for tat.
Yes.
Getting even.
Getting even with someone else.
Like vowing to not love.
Vowing to not love. What might in her perspective cause us to do that, to vow to not love?
Getting hurt.
Getting hurt.
We're not going to do that again. Yeah. Self-protection.
Exactly. She says, I love this line. These vows we make, we take them to heart, but the heart of stone that comes from saying we're not going to open ourselves up. We're not going to open ourselves up to love again. Isn't just armor that protects us from incoming attacks. What's the depth? Sometimes that kind of armor is necessary. And for a time, of course, it is. And yet, what does she say is the downside of that?
A heart of stone can't receive anything either. Can't receive love or surprise or blessing.
Exactly. And I think each one of us, whether we've experienced pure personal loss, whether in this world that we live in which we're inundated with terrible news every day. I mean, it's a wonderful world out there, and more human beings live without famine and war and disease than at any time in the history of humanity as a percentage of the population. And yet you look at Ukraine, you look at what's the droughts in China, you look at, the water problems in Jackson, Mississippi, you look at this poor teacher here in Memphis, Liza, who was just kidnapped and murdered in our own city a few miles away. And in order to go on in life, in order to keep living, so often we have to do as Pharaoh did when his own people were suffering, and harden our hearts. If we were open and receptive and truly felt the gravity of everything that happens in the world, how could we live? How could we move on? We, by our very nature, have to shut some things out. The suffering of others, the suffering of ourselves out. And yet, I love her idea that part of this notion of Teshuva, of the high holidays, of returning to the person that we might want to become, is annulling those vows that harden our hearts. Part of the job of the high holidays of Teshuva is becoming more sensitive to the world around us, becoming more sensitive to ourselves, looking inside for ways that maybe we hardened our own heart. We didn't even notice. But also, yeah, go ahead.
And Rabbi, I was going to say at the same time that we do have to harden our hearts to so many things in order to just get through life. We also have to be open to great compassion. It's just so important in life. This key, this compassion. I mean, Judaism and also Buddhism, they both just speak about it all the time. It's the key. The Dalai Lama, he might as well be Jewish. It's amazing.
I've never heard that one before, but I would recommend the Jew and the Lotus, the book.
Oh, yes, I have read that book. Yes, yes, yes.
Which is the account of the Dalai Lama meeting a delegation of rabbis and Jews, in large part trying to figure out how a diaspora stayed connected for so many generations, given that the majority of Buddhists and Tibetan Buddhists now live outside of Tibet.
Rabbi, thank you for sharing this. This is really powerful.
Well, thank you. Well, I want to, we have 3 minutes left, and I just want to open it up for any thoughts, any reflections that have come out of our discussion tonight. Yeah, Lynn.
In the opening, in discussing the unity, I was kind of surprised that no one came out with the basic tenet, Adonai Echad, which the oneness throughout all. Just kind of surprised that no one brought it out.
Yeah, very nice. Oh, go ahead, Terry.
We missed it. It seemed rather obvious now that he mentioned it, but we missed that. So if you play that out with the oneness, Adonai Echad, then we are one with God. Am I right? I mean, would that play out based on what the opening said? Lynn?
Not with, but in.
Okay.
There you go. There you go. I think it is such a spiritual disservice that we do to our kids when we teach them the Shema, which they learn it's probably the first prayer that Jewish kids learn. It's not a prayer, I guess. It is a quote from the Torah, but it is the most well-known prayer in our liturgy. And another time, maybe in my Rosh Hashanah sermon, we'll see if it makes it in there. There's a really moving story about some children hearing the Shema for the first time in a long time that may have lost their Jewish roots, but that's a story for another day. But when we teach our kids the Shema and all we say about it is the literal translation, that there's one God. Because yes, that is what the Shema is saying. But for centuries and centuries and millennia after the Torah was handed down with that word, it has been interpreted not just that there's one God, that God is one, but that we're all one, that we're all united in God, and that God is what connects and interconnects each one of us. So what a profound teaching that we just leave to the side. And maybe if our kids decide to become Jewish mystics later in life, they realize that. But how much more spiritually connected would we be as a people if that was the earliest lesson that we taught, that we are all one, that we're all interconnected? So thank you all very much for joining. And my prayer, my hope for each one of us is that as we hear the call of the shofar each morning, if you don't go to a regular minyan where the shofar is blown, and you have your own shofar, what a great way to start the morning. Even before your morning coffee, you can wake yourself up with a tekiah gedolah. But I hope that piercing sound.
Neighbors will be calling the fire department.
Rabbi, my husband, as a special surprise, bought me a beautiful shofar. I've never had one before in my life. I now own my own shofar. It came the other day. And as much as I try, I can't get my embouchure. I mean, I can't make
it. You got a note.
He says I got a note. I don't know how I'm going to make it.
Wendy, I saw in the plans for Yom Kippur whether we're where we're going back to having a general shofar blowing at the end of the,
Good.
and you should come up and blow yours when we do
I
that.
can't make a sound out of it yet. I don't know if
Yeah,
I'm going to be able to master this.
I'll come over and teach you. I'll give you lessons.
Well, Wendy, if you come up, and I invite all of you to come up on your keyboard.
Love it. That is great.
Thank you, Des. And you're all invited, but Wendy, if you come up, and even if you're not an expert yet, everybody will think you're the loudest one in the room because we'll all be
Right, I'll be at the one
together.
time.
Exactly. So thanks, everybody. I just wanted to end with
Thank you.
one line that's from Einstein, that if we can do anything, if the shofar can break us out of anything this Elul and these high holidays, that it be the spiritual and optical delusion of our consciousness that we're separate from other beings, from everything else. And in fact, we are all one.
That's
I wish you
right.
all a happy and healthy new year. Shana Tova.
Tova.
Thank you so much,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
Thank you
so much.
That was awesome.
Thank you.